And I believe we may be live now. So hello, any viewers. I'll go and check on the... It's so long since we've done a YouTube stream. I've quite forgotten how we do it. Now, here's a question.
We do it by closing the door first and being ready when we start, I think. Is that so?
Yeah, no, I just realised I looked at the camera and I thought I hadn't closed the door first. And the other thing I've realised is... yeah, I'm sure it'll do the recording as well. Let's just assume it is. Otherwise, I'll rip it off the thing. But
you want me to record locally?
No, it's fine. It's fine. We'll just do it off the stream. We've got a comment. Hey, it's Mohammed. Let's say hi to Mohammed.
Hello, Mohammed.
Hey.
And the comment is, bloody hell, get on with it. Come on. You've been on for like 3 minutes already. Haven't even done anything. Yes.
Yeah, well, wouldn't you, as I say, we haven't done this for blooming ages. Dave, can you remember the last time we were all streaming live? I can't, but I have a sneaking suspicion it was before the Russians invaded Ukraine.
It would have been...
I seem to remember
doing Mercy of the Icons, isn't it? When we paused that.
Oh no! That's the last time you did it. We were carrying on with doing whatever that thing about being Russian pilots in the Second World War was.
Oh yeah, Night Witches
over Ukraine, and then we decided being Russian pilots over Ukraine wasn't cool anymore, and didn't do that.
Very much not so.
I'm just going to switch some people around here actually, and move you over there, Dave, so that our guest of honor can be in the middle. And our guest of honor is friend of the show, Andreas Lundstrom. Say hi, Andreas.
Hi, Andreas.
I knew you were going to say that.
It's just you set them up, Andreas knocks them down. You know, it's just too easy.
Yeah.
And last time we had you on the show, we said Andreas Lundstrom of Sweden Rolls.
Yes.
And now there's some new words under your name.
Yeah,
here.
exactly.
What is Nordic Skulls?
Nordic Skulls is a newly formed förening, we call it here. I don't know what the English translation would actually be. It's kind of a company, but it's based on, people being a part of a community more than an actual company.
Like a cooperative, we'd probably call that here.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
But perhaps not quite.
Sounds a lot like the Stockholm Cartel to me.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if they have a similar way of doing their business side of the stuff. But a new publisher set on at least starting up doing Dragonbane open game licensed third-party products, starting with a world setting and an epic campaign.
And of course, that's why we're here now. And that's why we're streaming live. And that's why we've delayed our whole podcast so that we can catch this interview before the Kickstarter stops. You've got a Kickstarter out. We're going to talk about that in a moment. But let's get back to basics here. Let's talk about Dragonbane to begin with. Now, Dragonbane is the English name for the first time ever published in English, an old Swedish game called Drakar och Demoner. How good was that?
Drakar och Demoner, I think, is probably closer.
Demoner, yeah, you're better.
I'm going to say Dave was closer on that one. Drakar och Demoner.
He does have a Swedish wife. Go on.
I do have a Swedish wife, yeah. So
there you go. Yes, Drakar och Demoner, an old Swedish RPG, first published in 1982. Actually, with the first edition.
So when we ask Swedish guests on the show, as you will be aware, we normally start off with a question we're not going to ask this time, which is tell us about your life in gaming. And one of two things is the first thing they say, which is I started off with Mutant, or I started off on Drakar och Demoner. Anyway,
you're getting there.
Especially the very slow pronunciation of
yeah. What did Dave actually say? And as far as I'm aware, sorry, no, you go.
The trick with Drakar is you need to Yeah, exactly. Draw, like you say, draw in
Dråka.
English. Dråkar. That's much closer, much better. Sorry,
Okay.
please go
And
on.
och,
Ok, ok,
Ok.
och,
ok.
and
Ok.
och, with a bit of softening on there.
Just okay, ok.
Just okay, like the Scots say it as well. Then, och, yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Let's
right.
insult everybody in Scotland as well as everyone in Sweden in the first 3 minutes of our show. Excellent, nicely done. I have taken up a new role in. I have taken up a new role in the Effect podcast of Chief HR Officer and Standards Officer. So I think we should be having words with Matthew after the show about his performance. Anyway,
I look forward to that. Anyway, now there's just been a bit of news happening in Sweden with Drakkar Octomona. It has been plastered all over the public transport system, on the backs of buses, on the sides of buses, on the underground.
Massive.
Whatever you call the underground in Stockholm. Or, I don't know, is it just in Stockholm or was it in other towns as well, like Gothenburg?
I think all the pictures I've seen was from Stockholm, at least, because we're the only ones who have an underground.
Oh, right. Well, that would, So then,
And the buses looked like Stockholm buses as well. I think it's a Stockholm thing, yeah.
And the big Swedish SF bookshop, which I'm not going to try and say in Swedish, but it's like Forbidden Planet in this country and other American comic shops you may choose. But it's a big comic shop, and it's a big bookshop, and the windows were plastered with dragons, not just any old dragons, but dragons from the cover of Drakkar Octomona. So, so this was a big cultural moment. It seemed to me, here in the UK.
Yeah, it's been in a lot of newspaper articles and stuff like that, and they have a novel out for target group 9 to 12-year-olds, but I think most of the buyers will be men of our age.
So there's a nostalgia. Let's deal with the nostalgia first. Then, are you a mutant or a Drakkar Octomona person? I can't remember your answer.
For sure. I don't know. The thing is that the first RPG I ever bought for myself was Mutant 2. But since that was an expansion, I bought it because I had some friends playing AD&D in my class, but I couldn't join because they were like, "We already started. You wouldn't understand what we're doing, so you can't join us." And these were my friends, bear in mind.
Nice guys.
Nice guys, yeah. And so I was like, okay, maybe I'll buy one for myself. And I went to a toy shop, which was where they had all the RPGs back then. And I bought Mutant 2, and I looked through it, and I thought, this looks so cool. I don't understand anything about it because it was just a supplement, an expansion. So the core rules weren't in it, which I didn't understand. So I just had it in my closet for years and years and years. Never played it. So the first time I ever played Mutant was Mutant Year Zero in 2017 or something.
Wow.
Yeah, crikey.
So Drakkar Octomona I've been playing since '94. My first RPG, and by far, I'm pretty sure that if I combine all the hours I played Drakkar Octomona, that will exceed the amount of time I spent playing all the other games combined.
Right. Yeah.
For sure, without a doubt.
So it's very much, is it the Swedish D&D? I mean, it's not. I know it's not D&D. It's more like in Anglophone terms. It's more like RuneQuest or specifically Magic World, which was a kind of version.
But I mean, many Swedes think it's a translation of Dungeons and Dragons and have been for decades. Yeah, for sure. Many people think that it's I don't know how often I come into a Facebook forum and someone says like, "Oh, I want to play Dungeons and Dragons in Swedish. So where can I buy Drakkar Octomona?" Before this new version was out. So you had to first correct them and then direct them to whatever they wanted to play.
Did D&D ever get a Swedish translation?
Yeah, it did. It did in the 80s. Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
I have it over there somewhere in my RPG bookshelf. But it's like the red, black, and gold boxed set. I think that's the version.
Is that the expert version?
Yeah, exactly. Like
basic
ones. The red stapled, softback covers. With the fighter with a drawn sword and a dragon in the background he's facing. He has his back on towards the viewer.
Yeah,
that version was translated in the 80s.
Right.
So give me. I want to get a sense of, for a start, how many people play role-playing games in Sweden, roughly. What sort of proportion of the population? Because the number of people I've spoken to, and admittedly, obviously, most of the Swedes I know are in the role-playing games industry, so it's probably not a good sample. But I do hear anecdotes that suggest that playing tabletop role-playing games of any sort was more popular in Sweden as a proportion of the population than it was here in the UK. You got any evidence?
I'm going to say without a doubt, Sweden is like per capita the biggest RPG country in the world, but we're so small. We're only 10 million. So, in actual numbers, that doesn't, come to much. But per capita, like if you count publishers, if you count the amount of players, if you count, basically anything, podcasts, like anything RPG related, TTRPG related, we will be the biggest one per capita without a doubt. I've heard suggestions that, like, back in the 80s, every school class had a Drakar Demoner or mutant group in it. That's not true. I knew a lot of classes where no one played role-playing games. It was big. It was really, really big. I've heard folks about it's outselling every other RPG except for Dungeons and Dragons back in the 80s, even though it was only published in Swedish. I'm really not sure if we can say that, but it was maybe top 5 at least, for sure.
Wasn't very much the same in Sweden as it was here back then, when if you wouldn't really admit that you were a role player unless you were pretty sure that the person you were talking to might be a role player too.
Yeah, it was the last thing you said when you went on a date. Like, so what are your hobbies? Like, watching football and hanging out with my friends,
pumping iron.
That was the last thing you said when you were on a date. For sure. Or if you started a new class or something like that. Yeah. Of course, with some exceptions of great people.
Yeah,
but that still means that in that small population of Sweden, there must be a lot of people out there with a lot of love for Drakar Demoner with this new release. I mean, it's not really been out of print for terribly long, has it? Because Riot Minds had it a while ago, and the Trudvang version.
A lot of the stores still have the 2016 version, because it was kickstarted and it failed to deliver what people expected. It's not a bad game, it's good enough. And of course, many of the illustrations by Johan Egerkrans that are in this version comes from that version. So it was beautifully, it was beautifully made. And the rules are, some people are complaining now about this version not really being done as Drakar Demoner. You see, even I do it. But even so, many people gave that version a lot of crap as well for not being a reprint of the old 80s version. But that one is actually a bit closer to the original versions than this one is. So it's I actually wrote a whole article about that in Phoenix, the game magazine in Sweden, or we in Nordic Skulls did, where we did a historical overview, and then our theme was, how do you conserve the heritage of Drakar Demoner? How does one, respectfully continue a legacy? So for those who read Swedish and like Phoenix or can get a hold of Phoenix, I recommend that, because it's really a good article, in my opinion, of what do you need to think about when you're trying to conserve a legacy or keep it going.
Brilliant. That's a thing that any Swedish speakers will have to head to read that, and the rest of us will have to.
I have all the old boxes here if you want to go through the
Let's have a look. Let's have a little look at that.
I can give a short comment.
Yeah.
First, of course, we have the original one from 82. This one was printed, if I don't remember wrong, I think it was printed in 5,000 copies. And it didn't sell very well. So they ended up throwing away into a container somewhere, 1,000 or 2,000 copies. Insane. These are worth, hundreds and hundreds of pounds today, or euros or dollars or whatever.
There's a landfill somewhere with bag full of them.
It's like someone, I don't know. But then we have the big version that came out in '84, which is
with Elric on the cover. Yes, that's the one that I think we know. Yeah.
Exactly. There was another one a year or two later, similar box, but I didn't bring all the box, just the major versions. This was where, the version that many people now consider Drakar Demoner. The first one, not many people play that, and then with the expert version,
right,
Anders Blix introduced Anders Blix.
Still with Elric on the front there.
Still Elric, of course. Anders Blix was in charge of that one, and he introduced a D20 because there was a percentile dice for the first versions. So it being basically role playing, they went for percentile, but he felt that the D20 is so iconic due to Dungeons and Dragons, so we should have a D20 as well. So for me, Drakar Demoner is D20, not percentile, because I came in later.
Right.
And is it D20 in the way that in basic role playing, Pendragon is D20? So it's still effectively using the percentiles, but divided by 5.
Just divided by 5. Just divided by 5. Yeah, exactly. And then the 91 version came back to the old cover with Elric.
Back to the old,
Yeah, this is the one I played the most. This one and Expert are the ones I played the most. This one was the one I played when I started creating Windheim, actually, like 20 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
So is there a schism in the Drakar Demoner community then between those who love the BRP?
Yeah, I mean, when Free League announced that they were going to do a re-release or a new release or a new edition, of course, like one of the first question was like percentile or D20, because some people are leaning towards this and that.
Yeah,
it's not a big schism. It's more of a preference thing. It's not a huge.
It's not good. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not pitchforks at dawn kind of thing.
With the same rules as the 91 version, we have the Chronopia version. Cool. As you see, the aesthetics change rather drastically.
Yeah, no more Elric.
No, exactly. And like
slightly Elf Quest, if you ask me, actually, isn't it? The old 1970s and 80s.
Yeah,
comic.
like a lot more like bulging muscles and long caves and stuff like that. So this was more of a new setting than a new edition, in my view, because the rules are basically the same as 91. And then Right Minds took over with Trudvang.
Right.
With this version.
Very different look and feel to that one.
Yeah, more John Bauer-ish.
Yeah.
And I love Trudvang as a setting. It's one of the best settings ever for Drakar Demoner. And this game was great. I played it when it came around the millennial shift, around there 2000 or something. And I loved it. The problem with that was they came out with a new book like 2 years later with expert rules, which changed the rules, just enough that you couldn't really use the old stuff. You had to buy the new one. And then they released a new basic core rule book like another 2 years later, which also changed enough that you couldn't really use the old stuff. So I was just like, oh,
how frustrating.
Fuck this shit. I'm going back to the 91 version when my homebrew. And then the retro version, again, back to Elric.
And is that a reprint of second edition, effectively?
No,
or third?
That's what they said when they kickstarted it. And that's why people are a bit annoyed, because they don't feel like it is. They feel like it's a new game. So as I said, it's not a bad game. It's a good game. The problem was communication. They should have been like more open with, we're going to do our version of Drakar Demoner. Yeah. So that they used the Elric, and then of course we have the new one.
This one
with the like Elric homage on the cover.
Yeah, cool.
There's a few white-haired dragon riders I've spotted in some of the illustrations. I think you've sent us one as well for Windheim.
Yeah, we have a Windheim companion cover, which is also like a slightly less subtle Elric homage than Egerkranz's.
In fact, should we just show that? Let's just stick it over you. There we go.
Yeah.
Which is great. Yeah.
Yeah, Elrica. Yeah.
Yep.
But with an axe as well, which is good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. She's a meal, one of the cultures from Windheim. So, and that's their cultural of choice.
So of course, one of the big things that Free League announced when they took over the thing is that this was going to be a very open license. So almost to everybody in Sweden who feels a sense of ownership over the worlds of Drakar Octomona, that you can publish it, for free with very liberal licensing stuff, which you've obviously taken advantage of. Well, not taken advantage of, but taken the opportunity to do that with Windheim.
Because the tradition has always been a lot of homebrew worlds. Like it took a while for the first versions to even get a world setting called Erebaltor, which is basically the only setting for except for Trudvang, which are like the two big main settings. Kronopia as well, but it was so tied to that version. But Erebaltor and Trudvang are the two main like official world settings. But so many people played in homebrew worlds, so I think it was a good thing to do an open game license and just go with the Mr. Vale and not have this huge epic world, because many people will play in their own homebrew worlds anyway.
Right, which brings us
blank
neatly.
spaces on the map.
We have the same glass, Dave.
Cheers. There you go. Cheers. Both with water in, I assume, unless yours is vodka.
It's gin. Like Shane McGowan once said, famously.
Indeed. So this brings us to the Kickstarter. Let's talk about the Kickstarter in a while, but let's talk about Windheim now. Earlier on in this episode that this interview will be in, Dave corrected my pronunciation once more, yet again. Because I was calling it Windheim, which is how it's pronounced, and Dave said, "No, I've been listening to the video on the Kickstarter, and it's Windheim." Tell me about your strange Swedish vowels, first of all. What is Windheim? What does it mean in English?
Well, the home of the wind, basically.
Right.
Yeah. So it's when I created it, I called it with a simple V and without the I, so it was Windheim.
Right.
But then when I realized I wanted to do an English version, Windheim was the obvious choice, the obvious translation to tie into the old Norse, old Scandinavian, Viking way of saying things. Feel of it. Yeah. To connect it to Sweden, and because also, it's good to Swedish RPGs and RPG creators have such a great reputation abroad. So also choosing Nordic Skulls as the name of the publisher and company, trying to, take opportunity and not advantage, as you said, of, the good reputation that Swedes have abroad in the RPG business. Tying into that as much as possible.
Brilliant. So neither Dave nor I, as far as I'm aware, Dave, we haven't backed the Kickstarter yet. So this is your opportunity now to tell us why we should be backing the Kickstarter.
And just so you know, it wouldn't be the first time that I've backed a Kickstarter during a show when I've really had it sold to me. So
all right, I'll do my best. So
no challenge here.
Dragonbane is probably the best edition to date of Drakar Octomona, in my opinion. It's taken in influences from other Free League games, with the heroic abilities being similar to talents and willpower points, and some stuff that doesn't really come from Dungeons and Dragons, but most people recognize it from Dungeons and Dragons, like the death rolls or death saves. And some short and long rest and stuff like that, or stretch and shift threats in Dragonbane. So it's a great game, and the adventures that come with it are also great. But if you want a bigger world than the Misty Vale, a world where you can spend months and months and years exploring, with an epic campaign to change the world, Windheim is the one you want to go for. If you want, the adventures are not all dungeon crawls, but a lot of them are, or like tweaks of dungeon crawls and a lot of monster encounters. In Windheim, you will have a lot more social interaction. You will have political intrigue. You will have deception and murders to solve, and you will have like political conflicts on a grander scale, with the two dwarven realms who are at war with each other, from each of their great mountain ranges, and their allies, comes into this, the Bastionites and the Myr and the Elandines. And Horn of the Dawn is a campaign that I wrote for like a few years back. Windheim has been in creation for, like I said, like 20 years. So it's very well made, in my opinion. Like, it has a lot of depth, both when it comes to history, when it comes to the cultures. And Horn of the Dawn I have GM'd it, like part 1, I've GM'd 3 times. And every single time the groups I've GM'd has said that it's been one of their greatest RPG experiences as of yet, due to the many different sides to it. You have a dungeon in it, yes. You have political intrigue, you have murders, you have wilderness exploration. Like, I try to bring it all into one pot, so you can, as a GM or a player, you can put a bit more emphasis on monster encounters if you want that. There are a lot of monsters in it, but if you want to, you can put a lot of focus on social interactions and political intrigue. And as to why you should back it, I mean, the Thimsur Treasury reward tier is piling up with stuff. Not only do you get a world-setting book, which we said was going to be 80 pages. It will be over 100 for sure, with all the stretch goals that we reached, probably up to maybe 110. You'll get part 1 of the Horn of the Dawn, but apart from that, which will also be around 100 pages. And apart from that, you'll get a custom dice set by Lundstrom Dice. You will get, six or seven maps with different maps on both sides. You'll get 4 or 6 battle maps, which you can use for any RPG. And you will get 3 tavern maps, or 3 or 4 tavern maps, which you can use also for any fantasy RPG, not just Dragonbane. And you will get town and village maps, again, which you can use to any fantasy RPG, not just Dragonbane. So you'll get a lot for the money. And you'll get a soundtrack by myself. I'm doing the official soundtrack for Dragonbane, the game. And one of the stretch goals was a soundtrack for Windheim. And another stretch goal was to expand it by 4 songs. So it's going to be a big soundtrack, full soundtrack for Windheim.
So I've listened to some of those already, because you've sent a little preview, and there's some great songs there. I think what we'll try and do is close out this interview, and indeed the whole podcast. It won't be live to our live listeners and watchers. It won't be on here, but on the podcast, we'll finish with a song that in Swedish is something like the song or the ballad of Drakar och Demoner. What does it actually? How does that title actually translate?
It translates basically to the Drakar och Demoner saga.
Yeah.
Right.
Cool.
Or exactly. Saga has a slightly more fairy tale ring to it in Swedish than in English. Saga is more epic and more old Icelandic.
Yeah.
To it. In Swedish, it's more like Lord of the Rings was translated to Sagan om ringen, the Saga of the Ring. What was the first part? Then the Saga of the Two Towers, and then the Saga of the Return of the King. So Saga is also tied into old Tolkien history in Sweden. And I also have to say one thing about selling the my 2 collaborators, Christian Lindqvist, who's the one doing the maps. The maps are just stunning and amazing. And Robert Alm, who was actually one of the illustrators in the 1990s, doing the illustrations. And the illustrations are also like, in my opinion, like just top tier RPG illustrations.
So, I don't know whether we've convinced Dave yet, but you talk a lot about the physical, the maps and the ephemera that you can play with any game. And I'm thinking, Dave, we could play them with Forbidden Lands. we could. You see, we could use it with that.
So you GM the Food and Land, so that's you backing it then.
Yeah, so yeah, I think I'm having to commit to it. And is there a level? And I'm not saying this is a level to which I will ban, but did I see a level that is just the ephemera, just the physical things, and not the actual setting book? Or
no, what we have is like we have a 50 pence backer level where you can get, like, if you just want one add-on, it's like, I love the dice, I just want the dice, so you can back us by half a pound, half a euro, half a dollar, and just get one map
and then add on the things you want.
And then we have the digital, and then we have the digital reward too. You get everything. You get all the maps, everything as a PDF, both books. You get the soundtrack, and that's about 15 quid. Like 17 euro or something like that. And then we have what would that be? Maybe, I don't know, maybe 33, 34 pounds, maybe 35, 36 euros or something like that for just both the books. And if you want to just have the books and a single or two add-ons, that's what we want to go with. But for maybe it will be 82 quid or something like that, maybe, or pounds, euros, dollars. You get everything we produce. You get the dice sets, you get all the maps, you get the both books, you get soundtrack, dice, battle maps, just everything. And the only other reward tiers we have is for retailers. We have retailer backer level, and a one where you can co-create an NPC, which will be in the books, but that's already sold out. So we priced that too low, obviously.
Damn. Now, let's talk about some of the creative team behind it. You've said this is your homebrew campaign from 20 years ago, that started 20 years ago. And I've got a great question from our viewer, Emily, which we'll touch upon shortly. But you've also involved loads of other people. We talked a bit about the art. Tell me a bit more about the team behind it. I can show you a map as well while you're talking.
Yeah, because I mean the map work that we've seen and the art is, as you say, Andreas, it is top-notch stuff. It is really good quality.
Thanks. Yeah,
really good.
Do you want to start with the maps or the illustrations?
Yeah, let's bring that map up now. So this is on PDF. So
that's Foamsvale. That's the major town of the Bastionites, the human/halfling culture that rules the world. Basically, they are the Roman Empire of this world. And in
Windheim, have they recently come to the island? Or have they been there a long
200
time now?
years ago. So they've properly colonized all of the open spaces. They haven't been able to take any of the mountain regions. There's a troll woods with a lot of trolls in it. They haven't been able to take that. Yeah. But like all the plains and all hilly country, they've colonized.
Yeah.
And in the hills live an indigenous culture to the island, of like a hunter-gatherer culture that were allied with the Bastionites against the evil dwarves to the south. But then as the evil dwarves to the south were defeated and are now like effectively besieged in their southern mountains, the Bastionites have started to tax them heavily. So they have begun to rebel. So it's not all black and white. There's a lot of political conflicts and structures to delve into.
But this town, I guess, is where a lot of that intrigue and murder that you mentioned earlier on goes on in. Is it?
It could be. Yeah. It's basically the only fair-sized town on Windheim. We have a lot of like larger villages with maps for them, but this is the only like town where there's humans. I mean, of course, the dwarves have giant underground towns of their own, but that will come in more in part 2 of Horn of the Dawn.
And did you did you use just one cartographer for all your mapping?
Yes, Christian Lindqvist has done he's doing all our maps, and he's also doing all of the graphic design and layout.
That's brilliant. So carry on talking.
So he's doing both of those things, and he's an architect, so he knows his way around, building towns and buildings and stuff like that. So he's just a pleasure to work with. Like he sent me a suggestion of a map, and I was like, I was thinking more this and this and this, and then half an hour I get another map back, and everything is changed just the way I wanted it, or just the way I envisioned it. So, and he also comes up with great, like for the big Windheim map, he added a lot of stuff that I did not have on my incarnate crappy map that I gave him for reference. And I was like, what's this? What this forking of the rivers here? What's that? And he's like, I don't know, what is it? And I was like, maybe there's
maybe it could be this.
Yeah, so he's giving me a lot of stuff to work with, and a lot of stuff for me to get inspired by, and to add more lore and more cool places to Windheim.
Now, people watching us on the YouTube will have this teasing glimpse of something behind us. Let's show them what that is.
Yeah, that's a great picture. That is
this marvelous picture of a dragon on top of a citadel of some sort. First of all, who's the artist for this?
This is Robert Alm. He actually did some illustrations way back in 1990 for the Magic box for Old Rocker Demoner. And he's been illustrating stuff ever since. And I got to know him actually during a board game weekend out in the countryside outside of Stockholm, where we drink a lot of beers and play a lot of board games, and we shared a cabin, and just a friendship evolved. And that was 6 years ago, perhaps, something like that. And I've been talking about doing RPG books with him ever since, and now it's coming true. So it's very fun. No, he's great. He's doing a lot of amazing illustrations. He just sends us things sometimes, and I'm just like, oh my God, this is gorgeous. How do I get this into the lore of the world?
So did he also do Elrica with the axe? Is that one of his?
Yep, absolutely.
Has he done all the illustration?
Yeah, all the illustrations are by him, yes.
Brilliant.
Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant. That's all looking good. But I guess you're the main creative force behind it. And I do have a question here from Emily. There we go. Just found it again. And it's a good question. So I think it deserves a bit of an outing here. What has been your worst, your biggest, or your most notorious kill your darlings moment as you've taken this from your very own campaign into something that you can share with all the rest of the world?
Yeah, it's an easy question for me because it's very obvious. The main, like the big culture of the world, as I said, are the Bastionites, who basically rule the world. And they are called Bastionites because of their bastion, which is the central structure of their capital. So that's the bastion is why they evolved as a culture, why they came out on top during a great war 1,000 years ago. So they call themselves Bastionites because they identify out of that. So, bastion is a great word. I'm very glad I found it because originally it was called a borg, which is a burg in English, right? Mm-hmm. And it was their home. So they were called Hemborgare in Swedish. It sounds fine. But if you're going to do the English version of that, it's going to be hamburgers.
Yeah.
And that just doesn't work,
Well, you know what? I think there's another writer from Sweden who would probably have relished having a name like that because aren't the Rust brothers the Toast brothers or something in or Breakfast Toast? I'd have loved all of that. But
but you can't call it the main culture hamburgers. It just
it's not going to work, is it?
In my first English play testing of it, we renamed them Heimfurters, like it was because of fort, Heimfurters. But that
sounds even worse.
It doesn't ring well. It just doesn't ring well. So I was like, okay, I need a new. I just can't do fort. I can't do borg. What can I do? And I just started, synonym Googling, and then bastion came up, and I was like, bastion is a cool name. It's a cool name for the fort, for the borg, for the castle. It's also a cool name for. So then I was like, okay, what do we call the culture? Bastionians, Bastionites,
So, Google, Magnus. That's the answer for where Andreas thinks of his names.
It is true. Uncle Google is a great help.
Yeah. No, but the thing with the Heimburgers or the Bastionites, their naming tradition for towns and places is a very straightforward one. Like Foamsvale, it's a vale where the water foams, so we call it Foamsvale. We have a village on a plain, we call it Plainsville. We have a village where the vale ends, okay, so we call it Vale's End. They're very much into that.
Very literal.
They're very literal. And for dwarves, you just want as many consonants as possible, preferably a lot of K's and H in combination. So it's try to do it complicated, and of course basing it off the few dwarven names we know from talking.
Brilliant. I'm going to ask this question as well from your friend and mine, Dave, Andy. It's always an important one. There's a lot of fantasy settings out there. We've talked about the murder. We've talked about the intrigue, but I think I can point to fantasy settings with murder and intrigue as well. So is there anything else that makes Windheim and the Horn of the Dawn of the Horn? I can't remember which way it is.
Horn of the Dawn.
Horn of the Dawn.
I recently, I mean, of course, Annelie, who's very dirty-minded in Sweden Rolls, like she heard Horn of the Dawn, she started giggling instantly. But
we've already done that earlier on the show.
I just thought it was her dirty mind. But then Martin Allen, I don't know if he's a friend of your podcast as well. He's been one of our first patrons ever over at Sweden Rolls, and one of our longest, and one of our dear friends. But he pointed out to me that in Britain, Dawnhorn is actually the word for morgonstånd.
We've got lots of words for that,
but obviously it's not a thing in the US because none of the US people have reacted to it whatsoever. No. It's only UK people who has been like.
But just anyway, our smutty mind, that's what it is.
Well, if there's a proper word for it, and I accidentally named my campaign very adjacent to it, it's my bad. But yes, I actually have a Thursday series on Sweden Rolls where I talk a bit about world building, and I base much of it on Windheim, and I talked, like, I think the first episode was on USP, unique selling point, like what's the thing, and when I started creating it, I thought it was very, very, very creative in thinking that, what if the gods got their power from their worshippers? And what if the more you worship, the more power to the gods? Isn't that cool? And then I realized that's a very common way to do it. But then as I realized that there was going to be an OGL for Dragonbane, I started thinking of, okay, should I maybe put out Windheim as a third-party Dragonbane supplement? And then I read this meta plot about dragons and demons. And I was like, okay, so how do I implement that on Windheim? And then I just started, going wild. So you're going to get some ancient lore here. Not all players are maybe supposed to know this, but I'm going to do it anyway because there's mostly GMs.
Spoilers! Spoiler alert!
Spoiler alert! So in the beginning, there was dragons and demons. And in the clash between the greatest demon with the greatest dragon, there was a great outpouring of magic. And that magic created the gods, the original gods. And the original gods want to protect themselves from the dragons and the demons. So they created Eshfera, a sphere, to lock the dragons and demons out. So Windheim is a sphere, but it's the inside of a hollow sphere. It's not on the outside of a sphere. Now, I heard from Dante, Don Alistrand, that there is actually a D&D setting that does this. But apart from that, I think it's actually a lot more unique than, gods getting their power from worship, at least.
Yeah.
So it's the inside of a sphere where the gods have locked themselves and their creations in from the dragons and the demons. But of course, the dragons and demons, they want to try and get into this world to get to the good stuff, of course. So that's something that I think is, and as I said in my Thursday episode of the USP, like, you're never going to find anything that's unique. Like, if you think you're going to come up with something that's unique, you're just fooling yourself. What you need is a combination of cool stuff that, when you combine them, create something that is maybe a fresh take, or like if you're lucky, a fresh take, or at least interesting for people to go into and start, exploring.
This is brilliant. This whole episode is coming together really well, Dave, because didn't we discuss this on on Sunday morning, which is going to flow into this one?
It's almost perfect. Like it was all perfectly planned.
Like it was planned from the beginning.
Now I'm curious. Tell me.
We were just saying exactly that same thing, that there's hardly anything new in the world, and you've got to recombine it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's for sure.
But something you just threw away there, which I wasn't aware of, is that this dragon versus demon meta plot of Drakkar Octomona is new to this edition.
It is. Yeah. In the previous, like when they named it, they just wanted an alliterated name that kind of sounded like Dungeons and Dragons, but they knew they couldn't
far enough away not to be copyrighted.
Yeah, exactly. So they just wanted to ride the Dungeons and Dragons wave and call it Drakkar Octomona. That was just a cool name. There was nothing behind that, no meta plot. So the meta plot has come with this edition.
That's brilliant. Okay, well, we are out of time. It's been really great talking to you, Andreas, as usual. We will put some links in the show notes to the Kickstarter, but everybody get to Kickstarter and just search Windheim now, and if you're listening live, and back it. I know I will. I think Dave probably won't, looking at it. You haven't convinced him, but that, you can't please everybody all the time, Andreas.
No, well, it's you know what it's like. It's like being on the shore. You wash up a little bit and you get close to it, and then you wash away, and then you have to wash back up to it again.
Yeah.
So no. I think
it's going to be a unique time to get that much stuff for that little cash, because all of those stretch goals, the physical stretch goals, will be printed and just sent out. It's going to feel like Christmas getting them all.
And it already does feel like Christmas for me, Andreas, because I say one of the stretch goals unlocked, and you invited me to come on board and be one of your guest writers and write a plot seed, a scenario hook for you, with a long list of other writers who I am honoured and delighted and a bit embarrassed about rubbing my shoulders with, most of them. So
we have some
fabulous.
amazing,
but
you definitely belong on that list. Hey man, you definitely belong on it.
Great, thank you.
And Matt as well from Free Skulls Tavern, he's on that list as well. I just thought I'd call him out. And this chap here, who I've not heard of at all, no idea who this fellow is, but he seems to be very keen on the project.
He's doing 10 monsters and an adventure seed for us.
Nice.
Oh, excellent. Nice. Excellent. We'll look forward to that. Knowing what your monsters are like, Magnus, in the Bitter Reach. What have I just pressed? I'll take that one away. We've already answered that question. So it's been a great pleasure. Thanks very much for your time, Andreas. Just one last thing we need to ask you. And that is, before you say goodbye, will you say, "May the icons bless your adventures"? And then I'll edit into our podcast.
Which is our sign off, obviously, at the end of every episode. And we like to get our guests to do it because we've done it a lot, and we get quite bored with it. So it's much better when somebody else does it.
Yes, of course I will. Coriolis is one of maybe my top favorite RPG ever. I have an unofficial soundtrack that I hope I will get time to publish soon.
Yes.
I think we were talking about that last time we were on the show, actually, Andreas.
I think we might have. It's been finished it's been at least 95% finished for a long time.
Well, it's a real pleasure. Thanks very much. And thank you well to everybody who joined us for this impromptu stream. We'll hope to do some more streamings when I'm less busy. And we'll talk to everybody again. But for the moment, goodbye. And Andreas,
may the icons bless your adventures.
Perfect.
Brilliant.
Did I say it right?
Thanks very much, Andreas.
You did.